Welcome, friends. This is a podcast with interesting people. And today, my guest is Sarah Worlton, who is an inspirational speaker, a humanitarian expedition leader, and a podcast host of a podcast titled, Are You Happy in Your Heart?
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. We chatted before, and we just, we hit it off about this topic of happiness. And a couple of weeks ago, one of my guests was Taylor Proctor, happiness expert. What did I put down for her? She's a
happiness advocate.
Yeah, she is a transformational happiness mentor.
Happiness abound.
Yeah, happiness abound. So she introduced us.
Yes.
And I'm so stoked because, it feels like I'm talking more and more about like happiness and this seems like that conversation is kind of pervading everywhere because people do want to be happy.
Yes,
and
it's a big topic.
I'm happy to have you on the show because Taylor had a really awesome system, like very systematic way of deconstructing and analyzing and kind of looking allowing people to look introspectively about like how are they happy or not happy and what to do about it. And with your experience as a humanitarian expedition leader and a public speaker, motivational speaker, and with your travels to interesting countries that you're going to tell us about, you have a different perspective on happiness, like complementing perspective, but from a different angle. So let's talk about that. Tell me more about your podcast and tell me about like how everything shaped into where you are at.
Everything just kind of came together. The fibers just all came together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honor. So I've always been fascinated with the idea of happiness, and if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
Right.
And it all started about almost 11 years ago when I went on my first humanitarian expedition to Guatemala with Choice Humanitarian, and I was just absolutely blown away at this area of the world, the people living in these circumstances that I really didn't know existed. To me, they lived inside a National Geographic page. And to see them just like pop out and like all of a sudden this is real just kind of blew my mind. And it took about 10 years to really process it all, actually. But I really fell in love with the area. And that, we can talk about this more later, but that kind of catapulted into one expedition turned into 6, turned into 7, 8, 9, because I just absolutely fell in love with the work. Right. And I became an expedition leader with Choice Humanitarian, and that has allowed me to travel the world and to work on these sustainable development projects.
Right.
And I really wanted to start a podcast called Are You Happy in Your Heart? And the title came from how you say hello in Quechua. And so Choice Humanitarian works in the Polochic Valley, where the Mayan Quechua tribes live, high up in the mountains. That's like 10 hours outside of Guatemala City.
Right.
So it is remote.
And
how they say hello is not in Spanish, but in Quechua, it's masalachol. And that means, are you happy in your heart?
That is wonderful. Isn't that?
I love that.
How of a different perspective is that to like just start off?
Yeah, because in America we say, hey, Adrian, how you doing? I'm fine.
What's going on? What's up? Right?
Peace. Bye.
Yeah.
And you're completely unaffected. Like it's almost like the air you breathe, you don't even notice.
Right. It doesn't even make you think, right? Like how are you today is just so one dimensional that it's almost like it's just kind of like
I'm fine.
Yeah. Moving on, right?
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because that's just kind of our culture. But I like that they said, "Are you happy in your heart?" And then the answer to say yes, they would say "sa" or "salinchol." It's like, "Yes, I am." And that really stuck with me. And about a year ago, I was asked to give a presentation about my humanitarian work that I had done for the past 10 years.
Right.
And I thought, oh gosh, I have a lot of pictures. I have a lot of stories. I reread all of my journal entries.
Right.
I'm like, I don't want to bore these people with endless stories about cattle truck rides and like digging in trenches and, the fleas and the bugs. What do I want to say?
Right.
And then the idea came to me, well, are you happy in your heart? Okay. Are you happy in your heart when what? What is it? What makes you happy in your heart? So it really took me into a deep dive into really what's been the last 10 years of your life and shrink it down to an hour. What does that look like?
Right.
What do you want to say? And
how did you go about that? Because 10 years is such a vast experience to just whittle it down to like an hour of
hopefully interesting content.
Right.
And so I was really, I had just gotten back from leading a trip to Guatemala over Christmas. And so I was saying Masala Chol about 20 times a day. I thought, okay, this is the title. Are you happy in your heart? Lessons learned along the village path.
By the way, that's how we're going to title this podcast.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And so I kind of worked backwards, like, you're happy in your heart when what? And I narrowed it down to 4 key components or pillars or vignettes, whatever you want to call it. And the first one, first and foremost, forever and ever amen, is service. And I'm not just talking about like packing your bags and going to a far-flung village on the other side of the planet, but it's like service to your community, service to your coworkers, service to your neighbor, service to the lady on the bus. Like there's such a beauty that comes from that. And the second area of we can find happiness in our heart when we're free from distractions. Like we're so distracted.
Right.
Like, how many texts do you send in
social
one day?
media constantly, right?
I know. And so when we're present from that, and the third one is you can be happy in your heart even when things don't go as planned and when you get hurt. And the fourth one is the power of perspective. And so I used my stories to kind of help illustrate all of that, but challenge people to you can find happiness in your heart. You get to find what that means for you. This is what it means for me. These are my 4 great ideas, but you get to find what that means. And Choice Humanitarian, they focus on sustainability. They're not an expedition organization. They're a development organization that has an expedition component. And they focus really on that little sustainability. Like the former CEO, a dear friend of mine, Leah Barker, always says, what's your skin in the game? What's your sweat equity? How much are you really putting into this?
Right.
You know, what? And so Choice doesn't go into these villages unless the village has a plan themselves. And Choice is kind of, it's not necessarily a silver bullet. It's a connector with other NGOs, with other organizations to help further along their mission. So they say, we trust the poor. They are leaders in their own community, and we are validating that and working side by side. And so I really like that idea of sustainable happiness. Like, what's the happiness that's going to last?
Right.
And
what did you find out?
Oh, I found, I love that question. The happiness that lasts is the happiness you feel. I think happiness is maybe not something that you seek after, but I think when you show up for yourself, you show up for other people, you enjoy those moments free from distraction. Or when you say, wow, I just fell in a trench in Nepal and tore my ACL. This sucks. But the happiness that comes from it is kind of, almost a result, a byproduct of living your best life, doing things that are sustainable. And so that's a really interesting question, and it's one that I'm curious. So after I gave this presentation, I thought, I want to start a podcast. How do I do that?
Right.
And so I figured it out slowly and surely. And the podcast is called Are You Happy in Your Heart? It means I focus on happiness in an angle of really when you face the challenges of life, when things get really hard, because life is hard.
Right.
We all face just incredible amounts of turmoil, of strife, of challenge.
Right. You got the ups, you got the downs, and how do you deal with that?
How do you deal when everything's great and all of a sudden it tanks?
Right.
And whatever that looks like, and what that does to your happiness, to your sustainable happiness.
Right.
I mean, I love Chick-fil-A. I love the Chick-fil-A the waffle fries. Like, those make me so happy. Like, they're so warm and crispy and delicious.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like 2 minutes later, I'm stuck with just the wrappers and it's garbage.
Right.
Right? It's not happiness that lasts.
It doesn't last. It's not sustainable.
No.
And in
so,
fact, if you would overeat on that, you would feel terrible, right?
No, you feel terrible.
Yeah.
And so happiness that lasts is serving others. I read a quote it's one of those internet quotes that you don't really know who said it, but it sounds good. So Abraham Lincoln said it, But it said, if you want to be happy for an hour, take a nap. If you want to be happy for a day, go to Disneyland. If you want to be happy for a month, fall in love. If you want to be happy for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want to be happy for a lifetime, help someone else. And I really find that to be very true for me.
It goes back into that serving others quadrant, right? That you described. You hear more and more as well on servant leadership, which is kind of packaging that into how can I help others by serving them and being a leader, even through that. And the 4 quadrants that you described, like last time when we just talked about this, you also said you kind of gave examples in that. Do you remember like some of the examples? Like you can be like super rich, but so can you go through that?
Sure. On each expedition, after dinner, we usually bring the group together to kind of have a nightly discussion. Like, what did you notice today? What were you triggered by?
Right.
What didn't really make sense? What did you observe? To kind of help this cultural exchange. And usually the in-country director, who's a native of the area, kind of can help with that. And usually about after day 3, day 4, when people have really started to like get into the groove of the week, we do an exercise that's called What is Your Poverty? And we get a big piece of paper and then we make like 4 squares. And then we ask people, what are some words stereotypically that describe someone who is poor? And immediately the words just start flying out. Like, be as stereotypical as you want to. They say dirty, uneducated, no money, no school, no clothes, no house, begging, needy, greedy, whatever. And you write all those words down.
Right.
And in the next, you say, what stereotypical words come to mind when I ask you to describe someone who is rich? And they say someone who's shiny. Someone on my last expedition to Kenya said bougie. What does that mean? Or shiny or connected, educated, excess. The best restaurants, the best cars, shiny, clean, crisp and minty, right?
But also super busy, right?
Super busy, and your job, like
tight up,
ton of money. Okay. And then I said, what if I were to tell you that maybe someone who is poor has a wealth? And this is after they have had some one-on-one time in the village. Like, what are those words? And immediately they just start shouting out, connection to family, happy, living life at a slower pace, unselfish, right? And you're like, yeah. And then like the light bulbs start to go on.
Right.
And then I say, what if I were to tell you someone who is rich can actually have a poverty? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, they're disconnected. They're distracted. They, are trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
All those things.
Constantly busy,
disconnected. Like what I have is never enough.
Right.
And these are stereotypes.
Right.
These aren't comprehensive arguments. They're just like
generalizations. Obviously, there's going to be always edge cases and different types.
Sure.
Right. But in general, right?
And this is in general.
Yeah.
And how the squares line up. Like, what does this tell you?
Right.
And they're like, oh, I have a poverty, and it's what they have in great abundance. I find that when people have a great wealth and someone else has a great abundance, it's usually the exact opposite. And so that kind of like widens the lens of perspective. Like, oh, maybe I thought those Prada shoes were going to make me happy, but they don't. Right?
Right.
And that's not bad, but it just helps turn the tables a little bit on what really matters.
Right. Give you a different perspective on really how you can dissect.
How you can live your life.
You can live your life, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really amazing to see that come to life. Yeah.
So that influenced your your keynote presentation, like your I love that. That's why was the reason why I asked you about it, because it's like having those four quadrants and realizing that, that everyone, a lot of people, again, I'm just going to use generalizations, but a lot of people are like seeking happiness in wealth, right? Everybody's like, I need to make more money, I need to have this and that, and that's what's going to make me happy. And when I was talking to Taylor about it, she's like, I work with a lot of people that have all those boxes checked. They have, wealth. They have cars,
great
family,
cars,
pools, beautiful houses, and successful businesses, and they're like unhappy. And so, what is it?
Yeah.
And so, looking at because this is what society is telling us, right? This is what success looks like. This is what success looks like. You need to have all these different things, and then you're going to be, as if it's...
And then you'll be happy.
As if it's some kind of destination.
Exactly.
Right?
The danger is when you say, I'll be happy when. That is such a dangerous, sad place to be in. Because you are saying where you are right now isn't good enough. Now, you should have goals and you should strive, and there's nothing wrong with a big house. There's nothing wrong with a lot of money in your bank. But the problem is when we are constantly discontented. And I think you should be striving and improving. Like, I always want to be better. And I think that's great. But I think when we say, I'll be happy when I have X amount in my bank account, I'll be happy when I get married, I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds, I'll be happy when I finally get to Paris.
Right.
Well, what about today?
Yeah. And what if you...
Is the sun shining today?
Right.
Yeah. So what's...
Right. And
what about today?
And what happens when you do achieve that, right? Like, it's like, oh, I'll be happy when I'm going to have $1 million in my account. And
okay, so you have $1 million, and then what?
And then when you get it, and then you are not happy, like, what then? It's like, is it going to be 10 million, 100 million, billion? You're going to keep on chasing you're going to keep on chasing that while your life just kind of
And I had a mentor tell me once to embrace discontentment. And I thought that was really interesting. That means where you are now, embrace it to help you propel you forward. And I think there's a balance, because like in the choice villages and when we evaluate our own poverty, it's like, okay, here's what the plan I'm going to make to improve my life, wherever it may be. There's nothing wrong with that, and letting that discontentment drive you. But I think there's a danger when you don't enjoy today.
Right.
Because today's a gift and tomorrow is not guaranteed. Present,
right? That's why it's called present, someone said. Mm-hmm. Today is be present.
And the story that you told me of how you met your wife, I literally have told 9 people about that because I think it is so fascinating of just enjoying, seeing a big moment and a great moment coming from it.
Right.
Talk about just
perspective, right? That
enjoying the moment for what it is instead of noticing something that's not.
Here it is, first time on a podcast. So I met my wife as I was traveling. I was working for a company that was sending me to places, and so I flew from New York. I was in Amsterdam. My next stop was in Poland, and 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
I'm calling my friends. One of my friends was late to work that day, and he worked in the towers, and literally that saved his life. And so, a terrible tragedy, right? National crisis, out of that, and all of that, and so totally unhappy event. But if it wouldn't be for that, because the borders were closed and everything, and I was stuck and I couldn't travel. That's why I met my wife, because I was there when
so fascinating.
And so that gave me later on, as we kind of, it wasn't immediate, but it's like as people are asking, like, well, how did you meet your wife? How did you meet your wife? And then we tell that story over and over again. It's like at some point we kind of realize that, it's all about perspective. Like one thing that's terrible, that's bad, can still create something that's still positive and happy. For us, without 9/11, we would have never met, and our lives would be totally different.
Right, and you can there's always sunshine amongst the clouds.
Yeah, and one defines the other, and it's the other thing that we kind of talked about, and I so enjoy that perspective, which is, the world that we live in is a world of dualities, and this taps into a lot of different either teachings or religions and things like that. You have the oneness, which is whatever you want to call it, whether it's God for you or universe or the awareness or the infinite computer, whatever that means for you. That's the thing that doesn't have the time, space, but then out of that, what comes into reality is this reality, which is defined by dualities, which is defined by the opposites, right? Light and dark, up and down, time, no time,
right?
Good and bad, sad, happy. If you wouldn't have sadness, you wouldn't have happiness, because you would know when you're happy, right?
Yeah.
And so one is needed, like two sides of a coin. You can't have one-sided coin.
No. And I find that when I go into the village, there's this duality of, wow, I am taller than everyone here. I am white. I am wearing a Patagonia coat, and they're in that little, native skirt and top, and, and their skin color is black. I'm white. They wash their clothes by hand. I have a washing machine. It's like never are the opposites so obvious.
Right.
And it's almost like, you get to the village and everyone's just kind of staring at each other.
Right.
Like, oh, Mary, oh, God. And it's kind of this moment of like, oh, but then you just dive in and start dancing. And I'll never forget in Guatemala, the last Christmas, not this Christmas, but the one for 2018, my former boss and his whole family were there. And I had been trying to get this guy on an expedition for like 5 years. So now that Robert Brown was there with his sweet wife and his 2 daughters and he kind of looks like Hugh Jackman. He's just like this big Herculean guy. And he was dancing with this Guatemalan woman who looked about 90 years old. And they were dancing like this at the little welcome ceremony.
Right.
And it was I loved that moment, because it's like, oh, there was this moment of, oh, my 2 worlds are finally colliding.
Right.
It's about time. I was so glad that someone from my work life had joined me into this world.
Right.
But also it was this moment of cultural exchange, and it wasn't big, strong man dances with Guatemalan abuelita, like little grandma, but it was this moment of 2 humans connecting.
Right.
And it was just so awesome, because suddenly all of those differences just faded away, and they were celebrating that moment with the music and just enjoying being alive. And
right.
I loved that.
The present moment, and it kind of has it's coming back in like a almost renaissance. It was talked about by a lot of philosophers across many centuries, and one of my favorite guys, Alan Watts, who's talking about that, and then Wayne Dyer, and now you have Eckhart Tolle, who's talking about the power of now, and he talks about that, and boy, when I read his book and I was just trying to digest that, I was like, I was just rebelling against it, because like it felt like if you're just now, you're like, I'm just focusing on this now so much, and my future is like going away, like all these different things, and then I kind of understood what he said, like the past, we carry the past, so if you have some kind of baggage and you carry it, if you don't leave it, you're gonna carry it, and it's gonna affect you. The future is the projection part, which is like you project the future, like I should be this, I should be that, I should have this, I should have that, and then that's the burden of that projection, because you don't know if really that's gonna make you happy. But now is that present, is this present moment, like we're here right now. It's perfect. Everything is just perfect. And if you realize that, and if you embrace that, then the future and the past won't exist for you, and you're not going to have those stressors, those external stressors that are impacting your happiness. And
that's why I really love going into the villages, is because they're so present.
Right.
And they don't have, they're not buried in a phone.
Yeah, describe to me how is that feeling, like when they are, because they got chores just like everybody else. They
it's
things,
survival.
Right?
It's like you got to get wood and you got to get water. Yeah.
So how is that? How is that they're still happy, or that they are happy, or even happier? While they still have, because right now, like, look, we just turn on the thermostat. It's nice and cozy, right?
And we have water.
You got water.
And,
You got everything. You got food. You don't have to worry about.
I know exactly where my next meal is going to come from.
Yeah.
And where I'm going to sleep tonight.
Right.
And it's comfy and it's cozy.
So how is this that they are so able to be happy while not having all these uncertainties?
That's a great question. And I just find, so there's a difference between seeing people in distress after a natural disaster. When there's a hurricane or a flood or something, or an earthquake.
Right.
And you see people, like, you see the Red Cross planes arrive, and that's great. Those are needs that they need right then and there. They need food, shelter, and water.
Right. And
you see people almost in a state of panic. I would be in a state of panic if, like, my house flooded. Are you kidding?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I had to evacuate, or, my house suddenly was, burnt to the ground. I would totally be in a panic.
Right.
And I'd be grateful for those resources. And I wouldn't look very happy. I would look like, flustered.
Right.
Where's this? Where's this? In this case of, like, dire emergency. But you don't get that sense when you're there. It's not like they're very much like, oh, give me this. Like you see sometimes in those pictures, or you see in instances when there's a natural disaster.
Right.
The difference is you see contentment, because this is just the way of life.
Right.
It's almost like I wouldn't say they don't know any different, because their development is just moving along at a slower pace than in first world. And you really see a family connection.
Community.
You see a sense of community. Like that guy over there, like the Joneses, they're not my competitor. That's my brother.
Right.
And I watch his kids. She watches my kids. They all go play. We all help each other out. Let's go get some tortilla dough. Come on over for a party or whatever. Like you just get a sense of community.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to describe, but because when you go into a new place, it's like, you have to feel it out. Like the air feels different.
Right, because you're trying to map your own understanding onto the topology of where you are.
And you're trying to take your ideals and just kind of absorb what's happening, right? So in the sense of being happy, they just are. It's hard to describe.
Is it acceptance?
It's acceptance. Right? It's a slower pace of life.
It's non-attachment maybe to things as well.
Yeah, not attachment. And you can sense that they have a really strong work ethic, and they're content with less. And what they have is enough. And so, and their work ethic is incredible. I think the work ethic is here great. But I've never been so blown away by the work ethic of the women I met in Kenya. And just the physical strength. It made me feel like the biggest wuss on the planet. I'm like, okay, you're taking this 50-pound gallon of water and you're popping it on your head and off you go. Wow. I am not even going to try because I can't lift it up. Okay, put it down. And I think the happiness comes through a sense of community and family and knowing that they're all in this together and they all have a vision and a plan. They're like, hey, let's build a water system. Let's build chicken coops.
Collaboration
collaborate
versus competition.
Absolute collaboration over competition. That's the sense that I get.
I'm getting goosebumps because this is kind of a thread that is permeating my life right now. Today, when I talked to Shane and Kristen from the local farm over here, and I asked them, because they have a small farm, and I asked them, like, how do we propagate what you guys are doing? Small farm in a community supported. People are buying because it's a great product. They know them. They see how they do things, and they said collaboration with, like, basically, like, if someone wants to start a farm, I will help them. I will teach them. I will share what I have. Collaboration instead of competition. Like, oh, I don't want them to start a farm because that's going to cut into my business.
Better not be better than mine.
Right, exactly. And then I spoke with a good friend of mine now, as I see what he's doing, is just blowing me away. He's just in the same mindset of collaboration through sharing designs for open source hardware. So like, how do you build things?
Yeah.
So that I'm not a company that's just going to kind of, hold on dearly to it, intellectual property, and just kind of veil itself. No, I'm going to collaboratively design it and share it with everybody else. And then everybody who's in that network is going to improve it.
Yes.
And that cycle is going to continue, and this thing is going to get better and better and better and better. And it's such a total mind job. It's such a mind shift for like us thinking how things are working right now, because we have this competition. It's competition that creates things that are better. And now it's good for a period of time.
We're seeing we're shifting.
But now we're like, collaboration is which is going to take us to the next level,
right?
And it's great to see that, like, these indigenous people that are like in these,
they've got to figure it out,
third world countries, which we would like scuff at, like, ugh, they know nothing, they have nothing, and yet they are happy. And one of the secrets is that community and that collaboration. That's what gives them maybe the social fabric of resilience and not worrying about, because like you said, if I'm sick, I'll have my village to take care of me, right? And raise my child, as the saying goes.
And you really get that sense. And
where do you think that comes from? Is it their spirituality, religion, or is it just or is it everything, or is it innate?
I think it's innate. I think that they're not near billboards. They're not near, like, very few homes that I saw even had a radio or a TV. So I think that just is an innate sense of, no, you help each other, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to love my family, and I'm going to make sure that my kids' needs are met. And, when you were talking earlier about, like, this community, like, sharing of ideas, this brain share,
right? It
reminds me of the book, The Go-Giver. I don't know who wrote it. I should know, but it's an amazing book. And the whole point of it is, the more you give, the more you get. And I really see that in village life. And, not all villages are perfect, but the whole goal is to find local leaders and have them, these rural development leaders and collaborators come up with these plans to bring themselves out of extreme poverty. The founder of Choice Humanitarian was Dr. James Mayfield and Tim Evans. And Dr. James Mayfield is one of my favorite people, and he's just, he's 85, and he like can outrun anyone in push-ups, and he's hiked Kilimanjaro, and, he's spoken at the UN, and was a professor at the U, and he, really has worked on these programs in Nepal about eliminating extreme poverty and how that's done. And so Choice's goal is to work themselves out of a job. And I really feel like the way they're going to do that is, one village at a time, and helping their development become sustained. It's amazing.
How are they doing that while kind of not trampling what those indigenous societies have built?
A lot of collaboration and helping them kind of, guide them to do it themselves. And I think a lot of, like, when we circle back to happiness, it's, well, the sustainability and the happiness that you own, not that with someone that you create, that you can hold on to. So there's this internal sense and internal pride of the happiness really comes from within, right? And so if you're just waiting around for someone to give you happiness or to give you this, that, and the other, then it actually puts you deeper into a hole, because you're expecting it. And so instead of coming up with the ideas yourselves and coming up with, your own action plan with help of, all these different parts and pieces, then I think that's where the happiness can really funnel in.
You said that they have this innate kind of feeling about this.
I get that sense.
Do you think that's that moral compass, just kind of, or that moral compass of like what's right to do is just innate in all human beings? outside of like outside influences, because obviously everyone can be influenced, and we see that, I mean, everyday life where things are influencing people.
Yeah.
But in your natural state, when you are, let's say, walking on, you know, mountains in Peru, and you meet another person, and you don't have built-in sort of like hostility or, you know, against that,
I think people are inherently good. You know, I do.
Yeah, I subscribe to that as well.
And there's people out there that are going to disagree, but I think that the goodness outweighs the bad. And I think people naturally tend to kindness and happiness and a sense of community and belonging. I don't know where that comes from. It could come from the universe, comes from God, but I really feel like and a part of it is, you know, how I was raised and my environment growing up, which I'm very, you know, grateful for. But I think someone's in their natural state, then I think the goodness always outweighs the bad.
Right.
I do.
How were you raised?
By a really awesome mom. My dad passed away when I was 4 years old, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And it was a home full of like a lot of fun, and you do your homework and go play outside. And
Right.
there was consistency and a lot of happiness. And yeah, I was really blessed, especially with my mom kind of doing it by herself.
Right.
She's a rock star.
Right. It's all about that environment, right? Again, we're going back to the sense of community, going back to the sense of building that network that makes you feel safe, and that's kind of like how maybe even humanity evolved as well, like building these structures. And then at some point things got just so rigid and so structured that maybe it's just because of scalability, because there's just so many people in a way, so that we have these structures that are not, it feels like it's part of the community, but it's not part of the community at the same time. Like when you have, and we need like, you know, government structures and things like that, it's not like part of your village in a sense, right? Like in those villages where you are, like everybody knows everybody, right? Everybody, like if there needs to be consensus, people start talking and everything. Versus like right now we have this kind of abstraction layer. Like these are professional politicians. These are professional people that just do that. And we hope that they are, you know, righteous people and have good moral compasses and do the right things for the rest of humanity. But you see that kind of like in those smaller villages. You just kind of see that in a smaller footprint.
Yeah,
so
you absolutely do.
On your website, you have this, I don't know if it's a motto or if it's just like a heading that kind of opens up your website, which says, "Your company, your village."
Yes.
Tell me more about that, because I want to segue into how can we bring what you've experienced over there in those different places in the world where you've seen people work together and having that sense of village, that collaboration, right, and cooperation. And then we have the flip side of that, which is the corporate America, where you have like, you know, dog eat dog type of place, and you know, most of it in that competition that just kind of everything. How do you bring that? You know, and that's what I assume that quote kind of like, or that the title was suggesting.
I like that because, you know, there is this sense of the competition and, you know, making sure that your company is thriving and, you know, meeting all its demands and its company, its culture and clients and all that fun stuff. But the reason why I titled it like that is I would love more opportunities to speak to organizations and to help them see their company as their village, their organization, to have that sense of community, to have that sense of belonging, and have that sense of not only to gain employee retention, but a sense of
purpose.
And I think that's done through service. And it's not just, you know, going to some far-flung village far
I have a mission statement, right? I love that. And not that you don't need it. You need some kind of a mission statement. But if that's the only thing, that this is your vision and that's the mission, and you don't have the buy-in from people.
You got to have buy-in from people. Right. And I think service is so huge for that. I can't stress that enough. And whether you're going to Kenya or whether you're going to the homeless shelter or even serving the person sitting next to you in your cubicle space, there's such a sense of unity when you are having a common goal that faces outward. right? And there's just nothing more unifying than when you have a common goal, whether it's peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or digging a trench far, far away in Mexico, or doesn't matter. Because when that happens, when you have that spirit of unity and a shared purpose that has nothing to do with you, then all titles, all statuses, all resume points, personal politics that can just, kick against the pricks all the time fades away.
How do you get there, though? How do you get that into that spirit, into that zone of
you
of
encourage
what you just
them
described?
to have some sort of community give back. My good friend works for this marketing place in Colorado, and they do service. So they all go do outdoor trails for Colorado, and they make like hiking trails or something that's, makes sense to your area. Maybe, it doesn't have to be Choice Humanitarian. You could go make sandwiches for the homeless. You could do a toy drive. You can do a blood drive. You can do whatever it may be, whatever calls to you. But I really think that you can have your community and have that sense of purpose when you're serving other people, or even like the person sitting next to you in the cubicle. Let's say it's Bob. Bob comes in with a skinny vanilla latte every dang day, like clockwork. 8:35, he rolls in. There it is, right? What if you got there 10 minutes early and you just got it for him, just that one day? Or just something so small, or something like you're serving each other. You're a manager and like you're going to take your team to lunch just that for one day, or something, just something that allows you to have a sense of community, sense of purpose. And I think service really comes at the forefront. And I think the second thing that can help with your sense of community and seeing your village is put a big fat pause on distractions. We get so distracted, even in the workday. We get distracted by text messages and by meeting apps. That's the lifeblood. No executive, no anybody is gonna say, I'm not gonna look at my phone for a week. They're not gonna do that. But what if you did for 1 hour, and you just connect with your people, you talk to them, you notice things together, right? And I think that's so powerful. And when you're able to collaborate together when things don't go as planned, when you get hurt, when you face different challenges and different hiccups or different, just like you do in the village, you don't have this one village voice that's going to rain down and this is how it is. It's like everyone has a voice.
Community.
Everyone has men, women, children, they all collaborate with a common goal. Why can't you do that in your company? That everyone, and that's why I love employee engagement, and helping people have a voice and to show that they're heard, and being able to change your perspective of, well, this is how it is. I'm just going to look at life through this little lens. This is how our company runs. This is how our organization runs. Here it is, tried and true. What if you widen it out? What if you look at it just a little bit of a different way? And you're invited to just flip the script. See what happens when you do something different. What happens? It's
So what did you find?
It's endless.
So what did you find in the corporate world with kind of talking about these ideas that you mentioned over here? Because it takes, and I think we're getting there. I think it takes certain amount of vulnerability, your willingness to be vulnerable to that. Because as a CEO, especially if it's some kind of a publicly traded company where you have, obligations to the shareholders to increase the share value and all of that whole cycle that's driving everything else, that just tramples everything else typically in these corporations, because they are just so focused on the bottom line that they will just you're just a cog in this whole system, and you just don't matter, but you do, right?
You do.
And so to flip the script and to open up and be vulnerable and open all of that up. It's I think we're getting there slowly and surely, but I think it's a slow process.
It's a slow process, And to answer your question, the organizations that I've been able to speak to have been like more in a motivational sense, not really like a boardroom full of CEOs.
Right.
Haven't gotten there yet, but I'm finding that the organizations and the people that my message is starting to resonate with, they need kind of a fresh take, a fresh approach. Right before I left Denver, I spoke to this organization that it's a networking meetup. Meetups are huge in Denver, and it's people who are in career transition. And it was kicking off their new year. So the organizer said, "Hey, you come highly recommended, and I want you to come speak to our group." And I was like, "Great. I'm not going to talk to them about goal setting or New Year's resolutions or how to beef up your resume and make it shiny. I'm not going to talk to them about that."
And why?
And he said, "Great. We don't want you to. We need something totally to just kickstart the new year and something that's completely different. And I love how fresh and different this is." And so the first thing I said was, I'm not going to talk to you about goal setting. I'm going to talk to you about how you can find purpose on your path today when you're even in the midst of transition. And they loved it. They thought, "Oh, that's so, yeah, that makes me think of what really matters. Like, this is important, but I can find happiness today because I'm craving it constantly. And we're looking to create it and to eliminate what's not making me happy." Oh, sometimes they need those reminders. So it was really, it was an honor for me to do that. But the feedback I got was, wow, that was a breath of fresh air. I never considered that this group of people, this is my tiny little village. Because the networking meetups in Denver are phenomenal, because I went to a lot of them and I met great people, great friends, great networking opportunities, just because people equals possibilities, right? And what happens there is you stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm looking for a job in HR. And these are the companies I'm targeting." Oh, and then Bob over there says, "I have a friend there you can talk to." Right. So it's just this amazing collaborative. It's not the dog eat dog, I'm better than you. Oh, I'm going to apply for that job and I'm going to get it. It's let me help you. Then karma does its thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Do you believe that this is going to catch on in terms of creating the sense of village community and companies?
I hope so. And the companies that I have worked on in the past, I think it's just more of the awareness of it. And so I worked for a company here in Utah and then in Denver, and they really have that sense. That's why I stayed for so long, because there was a sense of community. Yes, we had the boss man and we had the sales team and all these different departments, but upper management really, preached from the tower of what the expectation was. And then they came down into the trenches and they walked the walk. And so it was amazing. And that's why I stayed, because they really said, our customers come first. It's the 5-star experience and you do what it takes. And I loved that. And that gave me a sense of, oh, this is not about the projects that I'm managing. This is about the people. Exact same mentality in the village.
Right.
And so I hope that it catches on, and that, I do sense a shift with companies that I speak to and visit and I'm aware of. I live in Lehi, Utah, the land of the Silicon Slopes. That place is exploding.
Right.
And it's,
right.
If any of your listeners don't know where Lehi, Utah is, look it up on a map and it'll be it's busy.
It's super busy.
It's crazy. It's not the Lehi that I grew up in. But I see companies shifting more towards culture, community equals retention.
Right.
And that looks good to your clients, to your shareholders. This guy has been here for 20 years. What are they doing to keep him here?
Right.
So that in and of itself is a sense of community.
And that's why people stay in a community, because they feel all these, there's a sense of purpose, but there's also that, there's definitely a sense of security as well.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. But also like the sense of serving other people that, that you will help, and, and I don't want to say quid pro quo, but it feels that like if I'm going to be in need, you're going to take care of me. You're in need, I'm going to take care of you. And that kind of makes this stable, if everybody does that, right? It becomes like this stable unit or stable structure, in that you feel so great about it, because staying at a company, obviously everybody wants to progress and they want to grow in some form or fashion. If you're stagnant at a company, people tend to get just disillusioned and just they just, if you don't grow, you just stand still. And so you have to have that component. But beyond that, obviously everyone is striving for more money and all of that, but that becomes a level at which you have enough, and even more, is going to be a point of diminishing returns. You even if you're going to make more, you're going to have to do more, and then that's going to make you more unhappy. And then just kind of like it feeds off of yourself. So what you just said is super interesting, because like, what is it that companies do that keep someone engaged and stay at a company for 20 years and a happy? But it's because it's not only just staying, because there have been people that have been unhappy at working at a post office until they retire.
Oh, this is just as good as it gets.
Yeah, it's like, I just need to retire and then I'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want that either. So it's not going to be just like the longevity at a company is not the only metric.
You have to be happy with what you're doing.
Right.
And also who you're doing it with.
Right.
9 times out of 10, when I ask people, are you happy in your job? If they say yes, and I say why, they say it's the people I work with.
Right.
Hands down, the end.
Yeah.
And
totally agree.
I mean,
with
a lot of times people really enjoy what they do. And, I had a friend say, I love my job, but I just don't feel engaged with my people.
Right.
And I talked to this friend and I said, well, find a way to serve them. Just as something little. And I helped my friend, this other friend, with his artisan churro company. Little plug for San Diablo's Churros. And I had some extras from an event. So I went to her place of work. Her name's Kate. And I said, come downstairs, I have a present for you. So she came down and I said, go hand these out. Don't put them in the break room. Go be the little churro fairy. And just go, because they don't expect it. It's a little treat, and it's a moment of engagement with your people.
I love that.
And she did it within like 10 seconds. They were all gone. And it's like, okay, it's a way of like little breaking the ice a little bit, with deep fried happiness.
And it's personal. Like,
so, and it was awesome.
Yeah. How often does it happen when someone just brings in a box of something, whatever treat, and they just leave it in like a common area, and it's like, all right, donuts are there, and they just kind of impersonal, people just flock.
And they just it's fine. It's like that sugar rush that I need. Thanks. And, but when it's a little more personal. So in Denver.
That makes all the difference.
In Denver, I worked in an office with me and 3 other guys. It was awesome. And I always knew, after a while, I clued in on how they like their coffee. And so for Valentine's Day, I got there early. I went across the street to Starbucks and I got drinks, for all the guys, for Devin, Eric, and Jeff.
Right.
I put it on their desk with a little note that said, Happy Valentine's Day. I like you a latte. And they absolutely loved it. They're like, oh, yeah. And it was just one tiny little thing that says, I see you. I hear you. I'm paying attention. And that's, I honestly think, where the happiness comes in the village life, because people are seen and people are heard.
Right.
That's so huge.
And people love doing things for other people. I mean, we have that in us, right? As human beings. Like I love doing something. Like it's when your life is so busy, and then you may be even angry with yourself, like, my life is just so busy, and I would love to do something for my wife or for someone, and
it can be so
and it could be so little,
even if their love language is gifts and they love the extravagance, that's totally fine. But doing something that says, I see you, I hear you, is so easy. It's as easy as a note
Right.
or a latte. It's like, it's almost minimal effort.
Right.
And it's funny is that was a couple of years ago. So this Valentine's Day, one of my, coworkers, I still stay in good touch with. They're like my bros, I got a Valentine text from Jeff with a little emoji of a Starbucks saying, I like you a latte. I still have your, and it said, I still have your note. And I was like, oh. And it was like this little moment of connection.
Right.
And it's those little things that mean a lot. So this like sense of community and, how do you pitch these ideas to corporations? It's easier than you think it is.
How are you going to, is there like it almost feels like it should be like a course or something that,
I know. I probably should develop this further.
Something for companies that you can
workshop
kind of workshop it. Yeah.
That is an idea that I've been kicking around the old noodle for sure. Now that's in the works.
Yeah, because bringing all that experience that you have and kind of putting all that together into something that would be then applicable, and like it's not like you need to, because it's going to come so naturally. But I think people just need to have that little either push or like just go through like exercise. Like
what could we do? Right. What are some tangible things?
Right.
And so right now, the presentations that I give are more of like in the motivational space. Like this is the 45-minute motivational, kick out the cobwebs, breath of fresh air, and asking them, are you happy in your heart? They might think, oh, that's kind of flowering, kind of Pinteresty lame.
Yeah.
But what I found is they don't think that at all. And when I tell them what that greeting comes from, across the board, the response is, oh, that's nice. I like that. And then they start to think, what makes me happy? Is it my cute new boots? Is it the cheesecake I'm going to have later? Or is it my family? Or is it the sunshine? Or is the fact that I just had a really great run this morning with my favorite dog? Something that's just a little bit more real. So it kind of helps, think on that. So it's something that I'm looking to do more, and also to be a further ambassador for Choice, because that organization just is ingrained pretty deep, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the first time I was there, I was like, okay. And a funny story about the first time I was there, I've never cried so much in my entire life. It was like, what's happening? Like leaving that village was pure torture, at the end of the week. But I had these muddy boots that were just, caked. The red clay mud down there just like stains everything. And so I had my boots, and for some reason I didn't clean them off before I packed them up like an idiot, but whatever. I had them in like a plastic bag. So when I got home and I was like processing all of this and just like, whoa, just my head was spinning for like a decade. And I didn't clean off my boots. It was like this little reminder. Yeah. They were still in the bag, and they were like, you're going to clean your boots? And I was like, I can't. It is a part, and that part of me was always there. And so I've since cleaned them, but for the first year, I didn't clean those boots. It would I needed to, when I went back the next year, I'm like, well, they're already filthy, so let's go, But it was such an interesting, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but it was just such an interesting reminder that place quickly became extremely sacred.
I love it because we need these constant reminders. And that's kind of like another thread that's in my life as well. How do we form these new habits? Because we, in this constant high, fast-paced world that we live in, we're constantly chasing something. There's a million things that are vying for our attention, that want our eyeballs, whether it's social media or this or that or the other.
It's exhausting.
And it is exhausting. And so I found means of reminding me what's important, means for going through some kind of a routine, whether it's morning meditation, cup of coffee or something, but like something that you attach other things. And there's a beautiful book, Atomic Habits, which kind of teaches you, there's a lot of techniques in there which teach you how to form new habits.
Yeah.
And then once you form a habit, how to stack other habits to kind of chain link to it.
Yeah.
And so we need those. And you know, if that worked for you, like this kind of like put those boots somewhere on a mantle or somewhere that you know, as you exit your house and go to work or do something, whatever, you see those boots, and that triggers that memory of all of the experiences that you've had.
I love that you say that. And one of the things that we do on a Choice Village that I would do in this workshop that I'm going to create, I just decided.
Yes, you will.
Is in the village, you know, you bring all the expeditioners together, and it's like right before you leave. And we hand them a postcard, and we say, and a pen, write a postcard and address it to yourself, like, Dear Sarah. And write on there something that you have learned this week here on this expedition. Something that you want to remember. A feeling, a premonition, a revelation, a lesson, a heartache, whatever, a moment of joy, the bugs, whatever, something that you want to remember, something that your take home, your so what, your now what, and then I'll take them back. And then I put in my calendar, 5 months from the day you get home, you get them in the mail.
I love it.
And it's this moment of, oh, I'm going to get my mail. Oh, I have a postcard. Oh, it's from me. Oh, yeah. And that moment, you are tethered back to that experience. It's brilliant.
I love it.
I have so many postcards, and sometimes I read them and I'm like, oh boy, I forgot.
Yeah, because we do forget.
And I have moments of I remember now.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you're tethered back to that experience. Yeah. And it's so great. It's such a brilliant thing to do that, in the workshop, or the workshop that, we can collaborate on later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But just having this moment together, write about it, and then you'll get it in the mail in 6 months when you forget.
Collection of tips and tricks like that make this happen, because it's not only a reminder, but it's also an emotional cue, because when you're getting that, it's a different thing when you have, even if you have a sterile calendar reminder in your computer. It's just this impersonal thing, just information. It's just information and nothing else, right? Yeah. A postcard, some kind of memento, some kind of thing that triggers that emotion.
Right, and you're seeing it in your handwriting.
Yeah, and it's just so powerful, I think, and it's it just taps into the emotion, and I think we're just kind of underutilizing. There was a reason why, you have the intelligence quotient that was so important for so many decades, how smart everybody is, what is your IQ,
Sure.
And then, right, it's this kind of that was the thrust of this is what's the most important thing. And now, within the last, let's say, decade, when the whole thing of emotional quotient, the EQ, the emotional intelligence comes out. And awareness. It's we're finally seeing that how important that piece is, piece of the puzzle, right? And so I think tapping into that I think it would be super important. So that's why I love that story. I don't know who came up with that. This was your idea, or
it sure wasn't. I will not take credit for that. Someone at Choice, I don't know whose idea it was. Brilliant. Just to do that piece on the expeditions.
Right.
I don't want to say because I'm not entirely sure, but it definitely wasn't mine. But
thank you. Yes, thank you for coming up with that.
I want to I'm curious to know whose idea that was. I have an idea, but I don't want to say because I'm probably wrong.
I'm sure that the idea of
regardless.
I'm sure that kind of idea kind of probably is done in different ways as well. But the idea of sending something to yourself or sending to others, it's just I love it. I love it. Wonderful.
A little daily reminder.
What else you got?
Those are big things. And just being able to take my phone, put it in a bag. Well, it's my camera, let's be real, but it's on airplane mode. It's absolutely off for such a long time. And you get to see things for how they really are. and you get to see people for how they really are. So we go through life through an Instagram filter. I do the same thing. I took a picture. I was going to see the musical Wicked in Denver with my friend. And so that day I wore my Wicked t-shirt that I'd gotten years before in New York. And I did my hair all cute, and I took a selfie of myself. And I am embarrassed to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I spent 20 minutes on a selfie. Do I do a closed mouth smile? Do I do an open mouth smile? Do I do half a face or full face? Do I do like I was obsessed over a stupid Instagram picture and the filters that funneled through it.
Right.
It was so lame of me to do that, but I did it. And it's like, what a waste of time. Like, yeah, the post was there and it was cute and I got a bunch of likes, whatever. But like boiling it down, I'm like, oh, Sarah, you are so ridiculous. You are spending forever on this.
Right.
Why? But taking all of that on pause and seeing things for how they really are in the exact moment when your path and its path or their path cross, and then it's over. It's like the universe is telling you a secret, when you see things and you see moments, be it a sunset or a spider web or a crazy parade in Nepal that you weren't expecting. You're like, what in the heck is this? That happened in Nepal. And I mean, what do we do when we see something cool? When we see Taylor Swift, when we see a sunset, when we see the beautiful view from your balcony, the first thing I thought of was, I should take a picture of this. But I'm like, no, just no. So like in that moment in Nepal, when that parade came down the street, the first thing I thought of was to reach into my big red purse, to pull up my phone and take a low quality photo. And right in that moment, my phone died. And I had this moment of, I thought, no, just enjoy it, smell it,
right.
Look at it, breathe it in.
Take mental pictures.
Take a mental picture, because this is a crazy little Christmas Day parade in Kathmandu. I have no idea who these people are. I have no idea what their incense or their costumes mean, or what they're singing and chanting. I don't know Nepali, but I'm just going to watch and I'm just going to be here, because this moment will never happen again.
Right.
And so I think that is such a gift when you are present and you see things for how they really are in the moment that they're happening. And the same thing goes with people. Like, expeditions get a little raw, my friend.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of showering that happens.
Right. There's
not a lot of like, get all nice and cute. I mean, there's showers. Yes, we take care of our people, but whew. I mean, makeup, really?
Yeah.
No.
What's important, right? And that's just priorities.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way. I'm sure there's a way, but I wonder if our society in general is going to get to the point that will realize how important the balance of those two is. You have technology and productivity that's
amazing.
That's bound with this. It's amazing. The things that we can do right now are just it's magic, right?
Magic.
You can talk to anyone, anywhere, almost anywhere, see their face.
Yeah,
it's like
I FaceTimed with a friend that lives in China today.
This is science fiction in reality, right? And at the same time, that takes away from like being present, because now you can do more. So you're like almost on some level you feel obligated to do more. I can do so much because then that's going to give me all these different things. And then
but who says that more is more?
Exactly. And society has this, like we have this skewed view, like viewing. The measuring stick is now like other people's lives, the Facebooks that you constantly looking through, like
better,
who's doing
faster.
what.
Yeah. And I know that that's the case at the Olympics. Who's the best? Who's the fastest? Who's the strongest? And that's fine. I love the Olympics more than life itself. But I mean, I think what you're saying, the word that comes to mind is balance.
Right.
Finding a balance. Don't get so obsessed with either one.
Right.
Find a happy
How come we're
medium.
not teaching that in schools? How come we're not teaching this to kids as they're growing up? Forget about like when it's too late already, when they're in adulthood and you're just thrusted into this torrent of reality of work and produce more. Versus like when you're and I know in part that's parents' responsibility, I'd say, in a way, but I think it should be your kids are going to school and it should be there as well, so people do realize what's important as well, and learn it so that it sticks with them when they're young.
And I think if someone said like, "Oh, be perfect," I would be like,
what does that mean?
I can't. That's so unattainable. But if someone said, "Sarah, go forth and be mediocre today," I would have been like, "Excuse me? I got more in me than mediocre. You
Right.
watch."
Right.
So I think when they say do more, produce more, like be your best, it's like, come on, you can do it. Like aim here. And wherever you are in the process, how many times you fall in, whatever, then learning and growth on your way up to your version of your best. If someone's, like, "You're awesome." Yeah, thanks. I am. We need those motivators. We need someone to say, "I believe in you." And that's why I love the Choice Villages we don't go forth and say, "Wow, you guys are poor. Whew, how about we get you some carpet
Right.
in your dirt floors?" No. It's, what is your vision? Because we believe in you. And we want to work with you so you can bring yourselves out of extreme poverty.
Right.
And it's not like the magic doesn't happen when we're there. It does, but it also continues once we leave.
Right.
Right. And I think if we say, strive for mediocrity, are you kidding? No, there's more to us than that. There's, we do follow the path of least resistance, like, oh, it's just easier to sleep in. But there's more to, I think people don't realize what they're capable of. Like, achieve perfection. Then you aim as high as you can go. And you do it the best you can, fully knowing that you can reach it, whatever that level means for you, because it's different for every people. If someone says, "Achieve greatness, Oprah," "Achieve greatness, Sarah," that's not the same. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it is, because where I am in my own life, or the people in their village, where they are, they're going to achieve, they could achieve greatness, and it looks different than I do, than what I would consider, but that doesn't mean it's better or worse.
Right.
I think.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot over there to unpack, and there's a lot of moving parts in this whole thing. I hate to kind of box ourselves into space where we just say, "Here's how you achieve happiness," right? Because that's not what we're saying.
Right.
It's not a destination. It's not like, we all know, like, that's what it used to be a lot. Like, hey, this is what successful means, and if you get there, you're going to be happy, and people gotten there and they're unhappy. So what's missing? And so it is a journey. It is a lot of different components that feed into it. And I think it's also important to know that it's like the happiness is going to be a kind of like a sine wave. Even happiness is going to have ups and downs. Even though you can kind of like strive for maybe that kind of like that place that's kind of like it's consistently great. You got to understand that that too will have to go up and down.
Right.
Like,
and
we just started this whole conversation with because of that duality. Because at some point, if it doesn't change, and if you don't experience unhappiness, even that level of happiness is not going to be happiness to you anymore, because it's like it's going to be saturated, and it's going to be, you're not going to feel that this is what happiness is. And that's why I think, and I'm just going to mention this because I believe that this is such a valuable thing, which is traveling the world for people to see, how great we have it over here in America. And then we're like, you go somewhere and you compare and you contrast, you're like, wow. And
so
it's like,
different.
and then you come back to your home and you're like, I live in a freaking palace. Like this, I'm a king. Are you kidding me?
I have carpet.
Yeah. It's like, and again,
brings things into perspective.
Yeah, you need that duality. You need that contrast. And, it's
gratitude.
It's at least several different companies that I talk to, like either CEOs or friends who are high up in companies, who say that what they do is they take time off and they go to another country and they do humanitarian work, because it resets. It's
the reset button.
Yeah, and it balances what they do.
Yes.
I had a CEO of this company, Mudbots, who's actually from here, from Midvale. Yeah. Which uses 3D printing to print. I told you about that. Yeah, 3D printing with concrete, building houses in 24, 48 hours.
Crazy.
Unbelievable technology, and James Lyman, the CEO over there, like he was highly influenced by his experiences when he was on a mission in different countries and seeing how people live. And then you come back and you're like, you have a whole different perspective and lease on life, because it's like you're just so strongly affected by it that suddenly like what you thought was like subpar, or like you were like, I hate this. You're like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And we're missing that. Like, and a lot of people are just missing that. And that's why they're like in this unhappiness zone, because they're like, oh, I want to get in this is what's going to make me happy. No, dude, you have to go and see how bad some other people have, and what you have is just amazingly great. That
I wouldn't say bad. I would say so different.
Or different, yeah.
You know, and every expedition I've been on, and I've been on almost 10, one thing, like day 3, day 4 in the village, I always crave walking across barefoot along carpet. And I just think, oh, I love walking barefoot on carpet. And then I get home, I take off my shoes, and I walk on carpet. It's that simple. It's like, oh, wow. You know, when you go out, when you do away with some of the comforts of life for a while, you realize, oh boy, I do live like a king.
Yeah.
I do live like a queen. You know, I have hot water when I want it hot, and cold water when I want it cold.
Yeah.
And it's clean for me to drink.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, but yet you also realize that living without it for a couple of days, or living in a circumstance is a little bit rough, a little bit different, a little bit, okay, that shower was ice cold. Or this water that I'm drinking is just clean. It's not cold. There's no ice or whatever. You realize you can be just fine.
Right.
You're just fine. When I was in Mexico, we were sleeping on these cots in this little cement house with one of the, Luz Maria was her name. And she had this extra section of her home that we just set up cots. And that's just kind of where we like camped out for the week. And, oh, it was so cold. Oh, the wind just howled all night. And it's like this orchestra of dogs just howled all night long. And I think I wore every article of clothing in my suitcase. And I was just like, it was colder than spending winter in Nepal. And I was just like, it's so cold. But guess what? I'm fine. I'm fine. I think being uncomfortable is such a beautiful gift sometimes, because that's when you think of a baby. I mean, you have a daughter. Did she bawl her eyes out or scream her head off when she was teething?
Better believe it.
Okay, yeah. It's because growth is painful, right? But it's necessary. So during those moments of discomfort, my friend used to say, embrace the suck. It was kind of funny.
Right.
During these moments of, oh man, the shower is so cold, or I am so freezing, or I can't wait for those roosters to crow because I want to get out of this uncomfortable cot. It was super uncomfortable. And those stupid dogs, you know, but I thought, lean into the discomfort because growth is happening. And then you realize, oh, okay, I am stronger than I thought I was. Or by just like, that's when growth happens.
Right. And challenges and uncomfortable growing with being uncomfortable with things and then growing out of it, which this going through development, or things that then later you appreciate, right? If everything would be easy, then it would be unsatisfying.
No.
Right? If everything
would be like,
you'd be bored.
Thanks for this master's degree that I just sneezed out.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
It takes a lot of work.
Right.
And a lot of determination.
And so everything that we talked about are sort of like components of that are weaved into this nebulous term of happiness.
Yeah.
But it is a journey.
It is.
And it has a lot of different components in it. And I think to kind of start summarizing what we're trying to say over here is that you need exposure to different things to gain perspective. Mm-hmm. And again, that's why I'm like so happy and so blessed that I get to do these podcasts and meet interesting people like yourself. Yeah. And so to glean that different perspective and learn from that. And I think more people should do something like that, whether it's by traveling, whether is by working with different. Get yourself out of your rut. Get yourself out of that.
Go volunteer.
Go volunteer. Go do something different. Don't think that you can't do it. If you can't do it, you will learn how to do it. You will grow. Maybe it's going to be painful. Maybe it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be satisfying.
Yeah.
And satisfaction is it's paired up with happiness.
It is, and I think happiness is the byproduct of that, of when you challenge yourself and you stretch yourself. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go run the Boston Marathon tomorrow. It doesn't have to be something huge or grandiose. It can be as simple as, I'm going to do something vulnerable and I'm going to show up for someone else as well as showing up for myself, and and letting the happiness, however you define it, kind of roll out organically.
Right.
Yeah. For me, it's been humanitarian expeditions. That may not be everyone's brand of, interest or anything. I have several friends and family members. They're like, no, thank you. And that is just fine, because they can find happiness and purpose for whatever speaks to them.
Right. In other places.
Lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what's next for you? Just to kind of wrap things up, like what is next for you in terms of spreading this message and building awareness? I encourage you to definitely think about doing a workshop. I think
you're not the first person to mention it. So
I think you have the energy, the positive energy. You got the experience for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
You have all those pieces of the puzzle, and now it's just is going to be creating, and the need is there. I mean, companies more and more recognize that, they need to build this village-like communities in there. And it can't be like this superficial thing, because people will just tune out.
You can sense when something's superficial. Yeah. You just can.
Right.
Or when something just seems kind of fake.
Right.
So to answer your question, what's next is, I'm so happy to be on this podcast. And I'm happy to see it once it's all live and share it. And I was asked to speak at a women's retreat this weekend in Sundance. And someone asked me, oh, are you going to run into Robert Redford? I would have zero chill if I ran into Mr. Redford. I'm like, no, I don't.
Hey, Bob.
I don't think we will. I'm like, do you want to treat us to dinner? Sundance is beautiful. It's at Provo Canyon. And we're staying, it's this mountain home, and they wanted a motivational speaker. And so I was invited to come do that. And I'm really excited. It's a group of about 12 women. A lot of them are single moms, and the organizer just could sense that we need a little getaway. And so I know one person, I don't know any of the rest, which that's going to quickly change, spending a weekend in a mountain house together. And so I'm speaking at that.
What are you going to be talking about?
How are you happy in your heart? And lessons from the village to help them take a look at what makes them happy and realize that every road that you go on has purpose. Every tumble in a trench or ride in a cattle truck or every disappointment has purpose if you let it. And I really believe a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm divorced now or whatever, and now I'm in plan B. I don't believe in plan B. This is all plan A. We're just in a new chapter.
Right. I love it.
And if you there's no plan B. I really believe, my personal belief is, God is in the details of our lives. And I can't imagine someone who created the universe, created the world, operates in plan B. Are you kidding? No. And if I am part of his creation, this is all part of the plan. This is all plan A. So hopefully my message will inspire them to feel happiness and to realize that these 4 key areas that I've mentioned can help them wherever they are on their path. So them doing that, and what's next is continuing to podcast and find people with interesting stories and what happiness in their heart really means to them. And I hope to speak to more organizations here in Utah, or really wherever, that this message could help them.
Right. If they're ready for it.
If they're ready for it.
You'll be there.
I have slides,
deliver.
I have props, I have an activity. Yes.
And where can people find out more information about you and connect with you?
Yes.
This is your time for a shout out.
Shout out! Awesome. Thank you. Well, first off, if you're interested in the organization that I work with, it's called choicehumanitarian.org. So you can go there and see what they're all about and how you can be involved in an expedition or different things they have going on. There's lots of different ways that you can get involved if you want. And how you can find my podcast it's called Are You Happy in Your Heart? It's on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean. And you can also find me on my website, sarahjworlton.com. And all the things there. So, yeah.
And we'll have that in the show notes as well. All the links to your social media and everywhere.
Instagram. I'm not big on Twitter. I just don't get it. I do, but I don't. Yeah. So Facebook and Instagram are my two social media outlets that I frequent.
Yeah.
But I really like any seminar or retreat that someone just needs a motivational speaker, whether it's for an hour or for 45 minutes. And I like sharing my stories and inspiring people to kind of reevaluate what's making them happy.
Perfect. Well, I am so glad to meet you. And this is just, again, just continuing to evolve, and I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to collaborate with you on some of the projects, the workshop.
I'm not going anywhere.
I think this is a key thing that can kind of get packaged up and then change a lot of companies and really help a lot of people reframe where they are and then just kind of, it's amazing to see how sometimes those kind of even small things just have tremendous change and it's like a snowball effect and all that. So thank you for being on the show, and
very much namaste.
And I will well, I'd love to have you again on the show and see how you're doing after your next phase that you're going to be going through. Yeah.
Oh, another thing, what's next? Sorry, I am going to Peru with Choice in April. And I'm very excited. A little worried about the mosquitoes I've been told that I need a mosquito net, which is fine.
Right.
Discomfort is good, needs growth, right? And we're going to be working in this little village called Santa Elena. And we're working on a children's nutrition clinic, and it's at a stage of construction where we'll be doing a lot of laying tile and a lot of painting, and I'm very excited about that. Excellent. So that's coming down the pipe. That will be my 10th expedition. So April 2020. We're calling Peru a perfect 10.
Just around the corner. Oh! So I want to do a podcast with you when you get back.
I would love to.
And we'll
see what it's all about.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, really good time.
We'll see you then. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
The world is full of interesting people with wisdom and extraordinary experiences to learn from. Join me on a journey to discover them, speak with them, and learn from them. I'm Adrian Sinclair, host of A Podcast with Interesting People at apodcast.com.